deriving design class diagrams. Okay, deriving means we have something in hand, and from that we are going to make something new. So deriving essentially means extracting something new from an existing thing. That is deriving. Class diagram, you already know what is class diagram. A diagram in which we represent the objects as classes. It was, I think, perhaps in chapter number 2 we discussed initial idea of class diagrams. Here the terminology is design class diagram. So design means you are in design phase, yani after that, after this design class diagram, you are going to write your code. So how a class diagram can help you in writing code? So you will be basically deriving your design class diagram. Excuse me. Okay, so design class diagram is a class diagram that will help you in your design, that will help you in writing your code. So basic idea is the same. So this chapter you are going to enjoy, inshallah, because all the major concepts are already there. You know them. But we are going to see the process of extraction, design class diagram from our existing diagrams that we have learned before. So let's begin. In our overall process of methodology, we are here, and you see that it is the second last step of your software engineering. And you know what? It also tells you that we are near to finish our course, because after that there is testing uh, and development integration and deployment that is left. I think this is not the part of our course anyway. After that we have I think one more chapter at least that we will be covering, inshallah. But the good news, you feel happy, inshallah, after seeing this, that we have come a long way, starting from here, acquiring requirements, going through all the phases one by one, did alhamdulillah almost all of these things, and now we are very near to our end. So this is a sigh of relief, alhamdulillah. We should say that we traveled a long journey and we are near to an end. That's the second last process of deriving design class diagrams. Okay, this slide is taken from your chapter number 2. This is just a revision, same slide, copy pasted. In chapter number 2, we were discussing our domain modeling. How do we model domain? We collect the domain information, and we perform brainstorming and classification by finding out what are the objects and what are the relationship with them. Then we visualize domain model using a UML class diagram. Of course, UML is a language which we are using for developing, constructing all of our figures. All of our diagrams are made in UML. So you can write UML with every diagram, or you can skip it, it doesn't matter. So we studied initial class diagrams, very primitive, when we were discussing our domain model. Now, once again, we are discussing or developing class diagram, but this class diagram is not as simple as the initial class diagram that you made in domain modeling. This class diagram, which we call design class diagram, is much more sophisticated. It has much more details in addition to the class diagram that you made in domain modeling. Okay, in domain model, if you remember, we made the class diagram without showing the operations or the methods in our classes. Here, inshallah, we will try to make it as complete as possible, because this class diagram, any design class diagram, we will use to write our code. In full screen, this Microsoft Word, it has some problems, does not go to next screen, so I have to exit and go to next screen. Okay, so what is a design class diagram? This can be a question. Let's make a question here. Oh, mashallah, question is already here. For this slide, we can make a question. What is design class diagram and what are the major inputs to design class diagram? You can write design class diagram as DCD as a shortcut. So what is a DCD? It's a structural diagram that shows classes, number one, number two, their attributes, number three, their operation, number four, their relationship between the classes. So one additional thing that is clearly new here is in our design class diagram is the operations. So because operations we didn't know at the start when we were acquiring our specification, acquiring the requirements. At that time we do not plan for the operations of the objects, operations of the classes. Why do we need? Okay, we should add something here. What is design class diagram? Where do we use it? Where is design class diagram used? Second sentence, second answer. It is used as a basis for implementation, testing and maintenance. Basic thing is implementation, that you are implementing your software, you are implementing your system, you are implementing your code, you are implementing whatever you have designed so far in the next step. So one step before implementation is your design class diagram. As I said that it's not, you are not going to make something new, you are going to extract it from some existing models, from some existing diagrams. What are the diagrams or the models that you use as input for DCD? So here are two. The first input for DCD is your domain model. You made domain model at the start when you were acquiring the specification or the requirements from the user. Then you made domain model. That domain model will be considered as an input here. You can take help from there, that what were the classes that you identified at that time, what were their attributes, what were their relationship. Second input to your DCD is your sequence diagram. Okay, a sequence diagram. What is sequence diagram? It helps you to determine the classes and methods. Important thing which were missing here in your domain model, that were methods. How do you identify methods now? Very interesting, very lovely. You identify your methods from your sequence diagram and some more attributes which might be missing at the time of domain model that you can find from the sequence diagram, and as well as the dependency between the relationship, how the objects or the classes will be related to each other, their relationship, yani their dependency. Okay, have a look at this figure and try to understand it. This is basically your class diagram. This is an example. We will see how we can make it with the help of step-by-step process, inshallah. So this is again the same thing that a patron wants to check out some document from the library. Have a look at this figure. This is how the class diagram looks like. The difference here in the class diagram, this is your original class diagram. Okay, in here you see some you see here some of the attributes. You also see here some of the methods. Here some methods are shown here. So that's your initial level, I should say intermediate, not very initial, not at the final, intermediate level of your class diagram. You have these classes. This is the name of the class. And if you remember, when you made class diagram here, there were three compartments, there were three parts of your classes, and the first one at the top that represents your class name, then were the attributes, then were the methods. Okay, here attributes are not shown, these must be shown. That's why I said this is intermediate. Classes, 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 classes. The arrow signs, they show the relationship between them. Okay, I'm just showing you a figure. I'm not explaining. I'm not saying that this is how you make it. I'm saying just have a look at it. How does this look like? We are going to the steps, inshallah. This is the second example. just have a look at it and try to see if you realize what is here, so that then I will proceed further. All right, this is second example of the class diagram. Classes, this is a class, another class, another class, another class. These are the relationship, and you see different types of relationship that we have. And yeah, name of the relationship are written on some of the relationship. Cardinality of the relationship is also written. This is the aggregation symbol, okay, because features are the part of the product. The recursive relationship, this is a recursive relationship. And then there are some classes which are not related to, which are not connected to any of the classes. So that's also possible. If that there are some classes which are not related to, which do not have a direct relationship with other classes, that's possible. But usually it should not be there. It's not a good design. I took these pictures from internet just to show you the idea how does your class diagram look like. All right, so we are studying our design class diagram. How do we derive it? Okay, in your design class diagram, we can also use design patterns. What are the design patterns? As we discussed the whole last chapter, the singleton pattern, the created pattern, the controller pattern, these are the patterns. When you are making your design class diagram, you can also show your design patterns here. It's not necessary, it's not required, but it's better if you can show your design patterns here. Like controller, GUI classes, etc. Okay. Yeah. When you are doing your design class diagram, you should do it very carefully, because after that you will be going to write your code. And if you make some mistakes in your DCD, again you will repeat that mistake in your code, so that will be very dangerous. However, when you are making your domain model, you don't have to be that much careful, because it is right at the start. It is just a starting phase. Nevertheless, I do not say that you should not take care in any of the state. What I mean is that while you are developing your domain model, you are more liberal. You are not feeling that much pressure, or you don't have to be that much very careful at that state. What are the steps that you take to derive your DCD, design class diagram? First of all, as I said, that identify all the classes used in each of the two inputs. What are the two inputs to DCD? Number one, your domain model. Number two, your sequence diagram. These are the two inputs of your DCD. So from that, you will identify the classes. What were the classes? Classes were your nouns that you used in um, from your description. You extracted noun. For those nouns, either you made classes or the attributes of the classes. Then you will find, first you identify the classes, then you identify the classes that send or receive messages. This is also an important part, because sending and receiving of the messages will show you the relationship between the classes and their objects. And number two, you will identify what are the parameters that were passed in messages, yeah, and also in their return types. When one class is sending message to another class, usually some of the parameters are passed. Okay, so you will identify what are the parameters that will passed in the methods of the classes, as well as what are the return types. The If you are calling the object of any class, of course you are requesting that class to do something for you. So that class will do something for you, and usually it should return you something. So what is that return type, or what is the return values? That you should identify in step number one. Right. So in sequence diagram, your first step is to identify all the classes. So these are the red, if you see red rectangles, these represents your classes. So check out GUI. is your class, checkout controller is your class, DB manager, loan, document, these are all your classes. You already know that from your past experience, but now we are extracting, we are deriving our DCD from sequence diagram as well as from your domain model. So from sequence diagram, we fetch something. This is the first thing that we fetch from sequence diagram. Second, we fetch from the sequence diagram, this is our also class. You see here, this box is representing the class. Here you are using a colon, and colon always represents a class. Okay, this is the class and this is the object of a class. See here, once again, these are the classes. The colon sign shows that these are the classes and these are the objects of the classes. On the left hand side are the objects, right hand side are the classes. This is another class. These are the classes that you have used in your sequence diagram. Step 1, you extract them. Okay, and second step, what should you do? You should identify the objects that send and receive messages, yani the parameters which are passed in the methods, as well as the return types. So what are the methods that have been used here? See here, it should be here. I don't see them. Anyway, we can find it out. This is the method that we used. This is another method that we used. Get document is another, oh, sorry, parameters, not the methods. What are the parameters that we are passing inside the methods? So user ID, CN list, CN list here, CN, U, yani username, D, yani document, L for something, it will somewhere here. D as a document, okay, C here, set availability as false, so true and false, these are all the parameters that we are passing. From these classes, what we can make our classes for design class diagram. These are the classes that we identified from our sequence diagram that I represented here in this figure. We represented here with the red rectangles. These are all identified in our next step. Okay, after that, in step number 2, identify the methods belonging to each class and fill them in DCD. Okay, so the methods are basically identifying by looking at the messages that we are passing to each other. These messages are usually written on the edges that are connecting, and your sequence diagram that can provide extra information for your parameters, the type of the parameters and the return types. See here, this is the first message, checkout, that we are identifying from our sequence diagram. Second message, which is our process, and we are passing CN list to here. These are the methods of checkout controller, because these, you see here, checkout GUI, it is calling this method, and of course the method refers to checkout controller, yani these methods belong to checkout controller. And see here, checkout controller is calling a method of itself. This is the recursive call. So yani this method also belongs to the same checkout controller. So it's very simple. You look at the arrow sign, and arrow sign tells you the class to which the method should belong. So this method, get document, it should belong to which document class? No, it is get document, it belongs to DB. Is available, this is available is a method of document class. Similarly, you can identify all the methods and the classes they belong to. Uh-oh, it's not working still. There's something. Sometimes it stops working next. Okay, is available belongs to document class. Set available also belongs to class. Yeah, it's written methods of document. So once you identify all the methods, fill it in your DCD. So in the first step of DCD, you just identified the classes. Now you are putting all the methods inside the classes, and you know that the methods are placed in the lowest third part of your class. Each class has three parts, so the lowest part is the place for your methods. So you put your methods here. No, still it's talking again and again. Sorry guys, it's not in my control. All right, third step of deriving DCD. In your third step, now you identify what is left in the classes. What is left in the classes? Can anybody tell me? We have identified the names of the classes. We have identified the methods of the classes. What is left now? In the third step, you identify the attributes from the sequence diagram. Remember that attributes are not the objects. Okay, attributes are their properties. The attributes may be used to get objects. For example, all the get and set. These are the major methods that usually you are using, and all the parameters that you pass inside get and set. All the parameters you are passing here, these are the attributes. Okay, usually when you are making the classes, you make the methods of get and set. Get one method, set second method for each of the attributes. Yani attributes are always kept private, and you provide public methods to access your attributes. Access means either you want to get the existing value of the attribute, yani get x, or you want to set the values of existing attributes, yani set x. So here, whatever you pass in get or whatever you get in return type of set, these are all your attributes. You can also find your attributes from your domain model. Some of the attributes were there that we identified. Okay, see here, use UID and user ID. This is a parameter that you are passing in get user. Get is a method again to get the value of the some attribute, and attribute you are passing here, that is user ID. Now again, yeah, it's here. Thanks God, it's working. Cn is an attribute, is available. Again, it's a method, but you are not passing anything here. Okay, false, another attribute that you're passing. This is the attribute value. It's not actually that attribute, it is attribute value. So whatever the attributes you passed here, you are filling it in again in your class diagram. This is the attribute. These are the attributes you filled in the second part. These are the attributes you fill in the second part. This attribute we didn't find in sequence diagram. It has been taken from your domain model. Again stopped. Very sad. When I start using mouse, I think it stops going to the next slide. Don't know why. Number 4, step number 4. Then the last thing that is left in our design class diagram is the relationship, how the classes are related to each other, and what is the relationship. From your sequence diagram, you see the arrow signs. All the arrow signs, they show the relationship. Also, the objects which are passed as parameters, they also show you the relationship. Sometimes you may pass one object, or you may pass two objects inside the parameters. It's up to you. It's up to your design. But anyway, from your domain model and from your sequence diagram, the arrow signs, they show the relationship between your classes. So let's see here. These are the arrow signs. They show the relationship. Okay, except this green, I should use here blue color. Let me quickly do that, if I can do, because I made different colors to show the relationship between different diagrams, between different objects. Let me just quickly choose Red one I have already used. Let's see orange. Little bit. Okay. Yes. You see here the relationship. These are the arrow signs in your sequence diagram. The relationship. This yellow arrow sign, it shows the relationship between checkout GUI class and checkout controller. These red arrow signs, they show the relationship between checkout controller and DB manager. This red one, this one red, this red one, this red, this red. They show the relationship between checkout controller and DB manager. Similarly, the green arrow signs, they show the relationship between checkout controller and document, because the green arrow signs are connecting these two classes. Similarly, the last blue one, it connects your checkout controller with loan class. So this shows the relationship between checkout controller and loan. In next step, you can fill that in your fill these relationship with these arrow sign in your DCD. So now you draw these arrow signs by looking at arrow signs in your sequence diagram.